A couple of guys that visited, and we'll see what ends up happening with them. Rasul Faison, running back from Utah State, 5'11", 200 pounds, had 1,100 yards rushing, 8 total touchdowns. His production up from 2023, where he had 736 yards rushing. Richie, how confident are you in the running back room if Florida State doesn't land him, and how much better do you feel if they do?
I'd feel a lot better if they do, because I don't care what level you're playing at. If you're going for over 1,100 yards, that's a big deal. Like it doesn't matter what level you're at, because the guys blocking for you and the guys that are coming at you from the other side of the ball are roughly in the same talent level. So even if you're that much better, again, if you don't have blockers, it doesn't matter. We saw that this year. We had a solid running back room, I thought, this year, and the offensive line was just so bad. So I would feel much better in the 2025 running back room if he does end up at Florida State. I think they have a great chance at getting him. I think there's a chance we could hear that this week. But yeah, I think he would be a phenomenal pickup.
Yeah, you really like some of the young talent that you've got in there. I know they really like Chroma coming in this year. I know a lot of people were not thrilled with what we got out of Cam Davis this year. I don't know, first year, if he could kind of slim up a little bit and have a little bit better of a line. I'm not selling on Cam Davis just yet, but
No,
obviously you're losing to a Philly. I don't know what my confidence level on Roydale Williams is. I don't know if you have a thought there or not. But I don't know if that's a back that I think you're going to, I mean, I just wonder, it is a crowded room at this point, especially if you get Faison, and then you get Jalen Lucas back too. Right. And so how you use him somewhat as a running back, somewhat as a kind of an H back or wide receiver, at times in the slot could certainly vary, but you've got a lot of guys to hand carries to. And my thought is that by the end of the year, Cromwell maybe your number one or the guy getting the most carries for you. You remember Dalvin took over in game, like 5 or 6 against Louisville. So, as excited as people are for Cromwell, I think it takes a little time for guys to get up and going. But yeah, you feel better bringing in a guy that's got 1,800 and change over the last 2 years. I mean, that's pretty solid production. People say, oh, it was from Utah State. Well, he also had a Utah State offensive line in front of him, right? Like he was also playing on a team that, the talent against him was here. Well, so was the talent around him, and so Alabama involved there, visiting there, Utah visit planned, I believe, North Carolina poking around some too. Seems like we've had a pretty good run of going up against North Carolina, not only taking one of their guys, but also guys that were considering them or maybe thinking about visiting them as well. But I wonder how much Bama pushes, because that's no matter what. They underwhelmed for their standards, but when Bama's involved, it certainly makes it tougher to think that it's just a lock.
and I think that says all you need to say about the recruitment of this guy is that Alabama is bringing him in on a visit. They are paying money to bring him out just to come see the campus. And you don't do that, especially in the transfer portal. Yeah, in high school, you might bring kids on an official visit just to say, hey, come check it out and try and get to know them a little better. But when you actually have college film on tape, that makes a difference, right? Kevin DeBoer is not bringing him in there just to see, what his 40 is or what his vertical is. That's not why he's bringing him there. He's bringing him in there because he wants him to sign with Alabama. And the fact that you're going up against a school like Alabama, and yeah, it was a bad year for them. We all know that by their standards, who am I to talk about a bad year after what Florida State did? But by Alabama standards, that is a bad year for them. And Kalen DeBoer wants this kid. So I think that says all I need to know. And if you can land him, I think that's a huge recruiting win, even if it's just in the portal.
Yeah, I like Florida State for Faison right now. I don't know if he ends up committing or not. Maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid or iced tea from. Well, why do I keep shutting Publix out until they sponsor us? I'm going to say from your favorite grocer. But I do like Florida State for him right now. But we'll see, man. The portal is tricky, and if Florida State can land him, I think that's a really big commitment. That's a lot of production you're bringing into a room that's already kind of crowded, but he may jump ahead and be your kind of RB1 if he has a good spring, and obviously fall camp needs to go well too. Make sure you're betting with BetUS. a couple of games coming up this week. Obviously, the NFL playoffs, which if your team's not in that, I'm very sorry. YouTube 150 is the code to use. You get 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000. With that, you also get 125% on your next two deposits, and then actually all of that is up to $2,000. So make sure you're betting with BetUS this year, next year, all the things. BetUS YouTube 150 is the code. Other visitor, another big one, and then we'll kind of move on from this, but Traylon Ray. We've talked about him some. West Virginia wide receiver, 6'1", 195 pounds, had 28 receptions, 426 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So not just an insane amount of production, but dealing with a little bit of an injury. I believe he's in a boot right now. And so we'll see. I remember when we brought Benson in and everybody was freaking out about the injury, and you know, that was the absolute best. But again, I mentioned this. I'm repeating myself, but for those that maybe didn't catch an earlier one, I do think that West Virginia. He was wide receiver number 2 for West Virginia this year, and probably I've been told was probably their most talented. With some injuries, with being banged up a little bit, didn't get the shine of a number 1, but certainly a ton of talent. Maybe a Tallahassee native, I think. Which is a big deal as well. You'd think that if Florida State pushes there, they could land him. Wide receiver room getting a little bit crowded too, but again, you're going to want guys that can separate and really be productive for you. The wide receiver room was crowded last year and didn't have a lot of good players in it. So if we're just calling a spade, right? So, Hakeem is still there. You picked up Deuce Robinson. You just got Squirrel. You obviously, like I just mentioned, you get Jalen Lucas back. You've got Moore and McCoy in there. You've got some young guys that you picked up last year. I think there's a lot of talent there. It's just how does it all come together? What are they able to do? And then the UCF, flip that you got, was it on signing day or right before signing day? Is it Boggs? So there's a ton of talent, and I know they're really excited about him too. But Traylon Ray, again, to me, that one is if Florida State, if he's a take for Florida State, I think they end up getting him. Would be my lean on that one.
Yeah, I think we're just throwing bodies at these rooms. The receiver room, like you said, that it was very talented last year, but your offensive line couldn't block. You didn't have great quarterback play. So how much accountability can you put on the receivers from last year? It's a little frustrating. Seeing what he can do, what he did. 400 yards is nothing to sneeze at in a college football season, especially if you're not expecting him to be, wide receiver 1. I think that's an important differential. And I think that if he comes in, he could definitely make an impact for Florida State. He may not be, what Johnny Wilson was, and nobody would expect him to be that. But again, you're just throwing bodies at the problem. And unfortunately, right now, we have a lot of problems in a lot of our rooms at Florida State. The quarterback room is a problem, and we're bringing in Castellanos. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, the receiver room disappointed. But again, I don't know how much blame you can put on the actual individuals in that room when you had a terrible offensive line and not great quarterback play.
So it sounds like with what I think we're up to 16 now. Harlan, you can correct that if it's wrong, but I think we're up to 16 commitments. People have asked a couple of times. I don't know if we've seen it in the comments tonight or not, but people have asked a couple of times how many guys total would Florida State end up taking. My number was always around 20, and I think they're at 16 as we stand. If you were to pick up Faison, you'd be at 17. If you got Ray, you'd be at 18. So you're getting pretty close to that number, right? 20 was always kind of where I thought they would land, somewhere around there. If it's 18 or 22, don't shoot me. But also don't penalize me 15 yards in the book. All right, let's get back to this before I go on a tangent. But I think you're going to be pretty close to that 20 number. I don't necessarily think they've done. I'd really be interested to see if they pick up anybody in the secondary. I think you could certainly use some help there too. I really like some of the young pieces. I don't think that the secondary is terrible by any means. And you had some guys actually come back that I'm a little bit surprised didn't hop in the portal. I guess the spring window does exist still for both entering and exiting players. But I would think that 20 is still kind of that number at this point. Somebody said committed doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah, all of these guys that we've mentioned, with the exception of Squirrel White, just because I'm not on Twitter right now and so I'm not looking at it, all of these guys have been announced by Florida State, so they all have signed paperwork. And look, Squirrel White 10 minutes ago announced by Florida State. So yeah, we're saying committed, but all these guys have signed paperwork to play for Florida State. I don't Certainly somebody could ask to be let out of their paperwork, but yeah, maybe committed is not the right word. All of these guys that we have talked about have signed with FSU and will start classes here in the next couple of
I think when it
few
comes
days.
to transfers, then and they commit, it's pretty solid. Like I know
Yeah.
DJ Lundy committed to Colorado last year, came back to Florida State, but for the most part, yeah, a high school commit means absolutely nothing. But when it comes to the transfer portal, a commitment is pretty solid.
Yeah. It's a little bit different. So shame on us for using that word. Yeah. All of these guys have signed the paperwork needed to get to Florida State. Again, could they get out of that? Sure. Could they transfer in the spring window? Sure. A little different than just committing. So